everyone, and welcome to the Omega Metroid Podcast. My name is Andy Spateri, joined as always by Dakota Lasky. Dak, what's going on, man? How are you?
Not too much, man. Just came off of a almost 2-hour game of Age of Empires 2, which was very satisfying. Me and my roommate just won. That was great. Been playing that a lot. Obviously, getting excited for this episode, which I've been looking forward to, especially after dealing with Other M for the past 2 weeks, which I'm glad we covered that, but that
it's
was
nice to move on.
Yeah, it's nice to move on.
Yeah.
And I got an update for my Meta Ridley statue that is on its way. So I take back what I said about first four figures. You could have put that information on the website, but they sent me an email, so it's all good. I'm looking forward to getting that hopefully soon. And yeah, that's all I've got. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I've been also looking forward to this episode for a while, and I've been looking forward to this episode because we are not alone. We've brought in the reinforcements. This guy is all over just our Twitter with some great takes on Metroids, very thoughtful comments. It feels like this should have happened forever ago, but we finally got him on. Reese is on the show. You guys know him as Doominal Crossing. Doom, what's going on? How are you?
Hello there. Yeah, so I'm what you call Doominal Crossing. I'm in the comments. I happen to like the Metroid. The Metroid, that you guys enjoy as well. I'm very big into music. One of my biggest things that I love to do is do mashups. My last one, I actually combined the BFG 10K theme from Doom Eternal with a couple of the Space Pirates themes from the Metroid Prime Trilogy. Metroid Prime Trilogy, that seems relevant to today's discussion.
And
so yeah,
whatever.
You can check that out on Reese's Pieces, that's my YouTube channel. And then, Andy, I know you were really excited about this, but my last project, I actually remastered the entire Metroid 2 original soundtrack in surround sound for the very first time to my knowledge. And yeah, I was really happy with how that turned out. It got a lot of good reception. And so yeah, you can also check that out. It's a completely free download. Nintendo Ninjas haven't gotten to me yet, so yeah, it's all yours.
Oh, you're running on borrowed time, buddy. Don't promote that too loudly.
Yeah.
This feels like a long time coming. We've been chatting for pretty much since day one that we started this podcast, and you know what? With it just finally lined up. We threw out there the topic of Metroid Prime Trilogy one day, and I think you had like something like a 1,000 character response or something like that, and Dak and I were just like, you know what? We just got to get this guy on the show, and by God, the stars have finally aligned. We finally got the whole band here, and we're going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about Metroid Prime Trilogy and what it would be like on the Switch. But Doom, maybe really quick, give everybody just a really rapid-fire quick history of you and Metroid. What was your first? Just walk us through your Metroid fandom.
Yes, I am truly a beacon of hope for reply guys everywhere. Yes, you too, if you reply just hard enough, maybe your lucky day will come, fellow listeners. But so my first Metroid game was actually, believe it or not, Metroid 2 on the original Game Boy. I never beat it. I only played it for about 30 minutes, I want to say. But like most people, I discovered, Metroid, through Super Smash Brothers, in particular, Super Smash Brothers Melee. And I was always fascinated with Samus for a couple of reasons. One, because just in general, I'm really into sci-fi aesthetics. That's always been, and to this day, that's like my go-to aesthetic. That's my comfort zone. I love sci-fi so much. And then two, just because of how different, Samus looked in comparison to all the other Nintendo characters. Because in Smash 64, I was just getting into gaming, so I didn't really know who a lot of the cast was. But by Melee, my Nintendo history was a lot more formative at that point, so I had a lot more familiarity with a lot of the cast. But I still didn't know much about Samus. And at this point, third-party characters hadn't been introduced, so I knew that she, or at the time I thought it was he, like a lot of people, I think. At the time I was like, it's a very un-Nintendo-like artistic design. And so I was always fascinated with that. And then I got even more interested in Metroid when I started going into the trophy lore and reading all that stuff. And then finally, one day, I think it was in 2003, I was in a Blockbuster Video, rest in peace, and I was just browsing some GameCube games, and then I saw the Metroid Prime cover art, and immediately I recognized Samus. I'm like, oh, that's the game that she's from. I gotta play that. And so I played that, and yeah, the rest is history. Metroid's my favorite series of all time now.
Nice. Well, it seems like we keep on going back to Metroid Prime Trilogy here. Dak, you and I have talked about it on the show before, so I'm excited to get someone else's perspective here. So let's just dive right in and let's talk about it. We're here today to talk about Metroid Prime Trilogy and how it would work on Nintendo Switch, and we're going to get into the nitty-gritty. We're going to talk button mapping, we're going to talk enhancements, we're going to talk control schemes, we're going to talk all of that stuff, and I guess we might as well get it kicked off here. But actually, you know what, before we do, I should give a quick shout out as well to, we mentioned Twitter earlier. Thank you to everyone that has been following us on Twitter lately. We just passed 500 followers. Very, very cool. So thank you to everyone that is digging what we're doing. And Dak, you've kind of been very hands-on on Twitter, so this I'm sure that feels nice.
Oh yeah, it's fun to put some tweets out and see people respond and get those endorphins flowing. But no, it's been really good to get some posts out there and generate like some appreciation for different aspects of Metroid and different games, and get some comments and discussion going, which I feel like is just good for fans of the game in general. I enjoy it, and it's nice to see people responding positively to it. So I'm gonna keep doing it. Seems like people are responding pretty well to it. So, and I enjoy posting about Metroid. So yeah, it's good to see. Thanks everyone for following, and hopefully we double that soon or triple it or whatever.
Yeah, I'm always down to like and retweet the post and, just give as much serotonin as I possibly can to the Metroid community.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Endorphins and serotonin. These are Metroid enemies we're talking about, right?
Yeah.
This is the Metroid 5 plot, boys.
Yeah. All right. So Doom, Dak and I have kind of theorized before that we think that Metroid Prime Trilogy is probably... I think that Dak and I both agree that it's going to come out for Switch at some point. I think, Dak, that we both agreed that it was going to come out at a general time period, maybe a year to a couple months out from when Metroid Prime 4 eventually makes its way to the Switch. Doom, I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are about like when you think Metroid Prime Trilogy is going to come to the Switch, if you think it's going to come to the Switch at all, and maybe why it hasn't come out already.
So yeah, I'm also in the camp that I think Metroid Prime Trilogy is a matter of when, not if. I'm generally not too keen on leaks, but the people that have been talking about Metroid Prime Trilogy are generally people that I trust, people who I know have insider sources. I do not have these insider sources, so I cannot confirm them for myself, but I'm putting my faith in a lot of these people. People like Imran Khan, Nate the Hate, also Nate Drake. He's on the Spawncast a lot. People that I just generally trust. And so I think what was supposed to happen was Prime Trilogy was supposed to release, maybe the same year, maybe a year before Metroid Prime 4. Obviously, Prime 4 got scrapped, and so I think right now Nintendo is holding on to it, maybe making some subtle tweaks and minor improvements in the process, and just waiting for a good time to release that for whenever Metroid Prime 4 is ready. And so it's kind of hard to nail down a specific date since we don't know exactly when Prime 4 is going to be ready, but I've always been saying 2022 at the earliest. And so I think that's a safe bet. And also, kind of off topic, but a lot of people have been focused on Metroid's 35th anniversary, but there's actually another, I would argue, even more important anniversary coming up next year, which is Metroid Prime's 20th anniversary. November 17th, 2002 was the release of Metroid Prime. That's right, I'll bet a lot of the listeners are feeling old hearing that. But it's true. Metroid Prime is about to turn 20. And so,
That's right.
I think 2022 would be a fantastic way to celebrate that with some Metroid Prime Trilogy on the Switch. Now, if it does come out that year, though, I don't think it'll have anything to do with the anniversary. I'm sure it'll be a coincidence because Nintendo does not remember at all when these games have come out. They will not acknowledge it. But I think it would just be cool if it happened just purely by coincidence.
Yeah, I feel that too. I don't know. I feel like I'm just like the delusional, hopeless romantic when it comes to Nintendo. That I feel like maybe we still might see something from Metroid this year, even though every piece of evidence says no. I have no reason to feel hopeful, but I do, and I'm not sure why.
I actually don't think 2D Metroid is that far fetched this year. Like, obviously, that's not the topic of this episode, so we're not going to go into it. But I wouldn't be too surprised if come E3, we see what Mercury Steam's been working on for the last 4 years.
Yeah. I feel like they've got to have been doing something. There's been so much rumors, or so many rumors for so long. I feel like there's got to be some fire to the smoke, as the saying goes. So, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But I mean, let's keep it focused on Trilogy here. We've often talked about the control schemes and what we hope they would implement for Metroid Prime Trilogy on the Switch, and that being a switch to more conventional dual analog controls, and maybe the option to have like gyro controls, stuff like that. What are your thoughts? Like, what do you think is realistic, and what would you hope to see happen if those are two different things? Because I was telling Dak a couple weeks ago that, like, when Nintendo showed off Skyward Sword HD, that kind of made me a little bit more hopeful for Metroid Prime Trilogy, because it showed that they're at least willing to tinker control schemes of games that are heavily tied to motion controls and make it a little bit more accessible for Nintendo Switch. I'd be curious to hear what you think.
Well, yeah, so I think the safe bet is to go and look at what's been done in previous Wii ports up to this point. Because right now, it's hard to tell exactly what's going to happen, because we don't know who's making the trilogy. I would assume it's Retro, but I mean, it could be another studio. It could even be something like Monster Games, who typically offers a lot of support help in Retro's games. They ported Donkey Kong Country 3D to 3DS. They helped with Tropical Freeze on the original Wii U release. So it could be them, could be Retro, could be another studio, could be Nintendo internal. We don't really know that for sure. So the best bet, I think, is to just go off of consistencies that we've seen across the board for Wii ports, if that makes sense. And so one of the things that I think makes sense is I think there will be some sort of replication of the Wii motion controls through the Joy-Cons. We saw that with Super Mario Galaxy on the 3D All-Stars collection. We're seeing that again with the upcoming Skyward Sword HD, like you mentioned. And so I think it's fair to say that there's going to be an attempt to replicate that. Maybe not perfectly, since there's no sensor bar, and those controls aren't going to be at a 1-to-1 accuracy like it was on the Wii. But I think they're going to try to replicate that to the best of their abilities. But I also don't think that they have to limit themselves to that, because there was another really interesting precedent that happened with 3D All-Stars, and that was with the second update of the game. They actually updated it so that Super Mario Sunshine could be compatible with the original GameCube control via the GameCube adapter. And so I think this would be a really cool opportunity for to have Metroid Primes 1 and 2 have those classic retro controls. I don't think they should be the default. I don't think they've aged particularly well. However, if you're someone who grew up on that and you want to have that authentic feel, I think that would just be a nice little bonus feature to add. For someone who does, want that single analog feature, quickly changing your beams with your C-stick, and then, classic lock-on and strafing and stuff like that.
What do you think about that, Dak?
I mean, at this point, it's like 2021. I should be able to map whatever button I want to whatever button is on the controls, but Nintendo's still like 20 years behind, so we can't do that. And Trilogy ideally should have as many control options as possible. Give me the Pro Controller, GameCube controller, Joy-Cons, whatever. Make the game like as accessible as possible at this point. You also had 20 years to figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, outside of Smash, you don't really see many games offer like full button remapping, which is really really unfortunate, because like, kind of off topic, I think Nintendo is one of the worst companies when it comes to like accessibility, and I want everybody to be able to play Metroid Prime Trilogy, able-bodied or not. And so I think
they've done that in the past, though. Like they've in the past they've made it like accessible for people to play the game and like carry your accessories over. Like you like when for the Wii, like being able to use like or the Wii U being able to use all the Wii stuff and all the GameCube stuff as well, or whatever, right? Like being like, I feel like in the past Nintendo has made it so, and even with the Switch, like a lot of games even these days, even Smash and others have a lot of control options. But I'm afraid that because it's a port and like look how like half-assed the Super Mario Trilogy, collection, like that was a Mario remake collection. Like, that's why I'm kind of like iffy. Like, hopefully they do all this stuff, but I don't know if they will, because it's like a Metroid port, and which they haven't even put out yet. We don't even know it exists. But the Mario port that we do know exists, that was like bad, and that was a Mario game. So I don't know. I hope we get this stuff though. I mean, it looks good. I would like
Yeah,
to
like
get
I
all the
said,
different options.
it's kind of hard to speculate on that because again, like I believe 3D All Stars was done internally. Someone correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe that was done internally. But then you have other stuff like the Grezzo ports with like the Zelda stuff, and now Miitopia, which is coming out on the Switch, which obviously have a lot more effort put into them. And then of course you also have the Wii U ports. Most of them, I think, with the exception of like New Super Mario Bros. Deluxe, which has tons of bonus content and stuff like that. So it's hard to pinpoint just how much effort Nintendo is going to put into it. And then you also have to factor in with 3D All Stars. Well, it's Mario, so it's going to sell. So does there really need to be effort put into it versus Metroid, which doesn't have that same kind of avant-garde banner. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It doesn't have that same selling power that Mario does. And so it's hard to tell if Nintendo would not want to put in the effort because they don't want to put in the kind of money, or if they do want to put in the kind of effort so that it's a more appealing package, since the Metroid name alone doesn't have that kind of power.
So I have a couple thoughts on this, and maybe again I'm just being a little bit more optimistic, but I agree with you actually, Dak. I think that Nintendo as the last couple of years broadened a little bit in terms of like how the player can control their games. I think that they're a little bit better at being a little bit more accessible now, but in my mind, so I'm of the theory that Metroid Prime Trilogy is going to be almost like a demo for Metroid Prime 4. That just makes sense to me, to release this before Prime 4 and get people excited for it. So I just don't think that they would release these kind of half-ass ports like they did with Mario 64 in particular. I thought was really bad in All Stars. It really had aged a lot, and it was very noticeable. The other thing that makes me a little bit more hopeful for Prime Trilogy is that you really don't have the option to control them like you did previously. You have no Wiimote, you have no sensor bar. You could control them gyroscopically, but I just don't know. Well, but yeah, and like you could move your Joy-Cons around, and you could use it that way in place of a Wiimote. I don't know. My gut just tells me that I don't think that they would base the entire game around that. I could be totally wrong, but I don't see them. Like, I don't see me moving my hand left with my Joy-Con and then, Samus turning left. I don't think that that's going to happen. I do think that they'll, put a little bit of time into tweaking the controls because, Doom, you mentioned all of the Wii U ports that have come over to the Switch, and by and large, like, all of those games have had something added to make them more attractive to purchase. Like, Mario Kart had all the bonus stuff put in, Donkey Kong had funky mode or whatever it was. Like, there's usually been something to say, like, we know that these are old games, but, like, this is why you should invest, $80 Canadian into them again. And I think that by modernizing the controls, that's what Nintendo can say, like, you know what, yeah, these are almost 20-year-old games, but they've been updated, and this is how you can justify your purchase. And I mean, obviously you get 3 games in one, but still. I don't know. Maybe I'm, like I said, the hopeless romantic here with Nintendo, but I just I see that being the case when these games eventually do come out, because I think that, like you said, it's a matter of when and not if.
I will say something that I think might possibly lend a little more optimism, but I mean it's however you take it, so it's by no means guaranteed. But I think the one advantage that Metroid Prime Trilogy has is that Nintendo technically considers it a single game, whereas Mario 3D All Stars, that's Nintendo considering it like, hey, we're bundling in 3 games for the price of 1. Whereas Metroid Prime Trilogy, Nintendo already considers that as a whole one game. And we know this because when Nintendo released it for the Wii U, because Nintendo, they released a lot of their Wii games digitally on the Wii U. Weirdly enough, not under the Virtual Console banner, but whatever. It's priced the same way as the other Wii titles. So, Mario Galaxy 2, $20. Metroid Prime Trilogy, $20. Punch-Out, $20. These games are all the same price. So Nintendo already considers the trilogy the same value as one Wii game. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities to expect it to be given the same treatment as, say, the Wind Waker HD or Twilight Princess HD, Skyward Sword HD.
Yeah, but those are
Yeah.
HD ports, though, right? Like we're not considering that this is going to be an HD port. We're just considering that it's going to be a regular. They're just going to put it on the Switch. Like I don't really think they're going to like remaster the game in any kind of way. I don't know. It might just be semantics, but yeah, we'll see. I would hope so, but you never know
I'm
with
pretty
Nintendo.
indifferent. I could see it going either way. Personally, for me, I think I could definitely see Prime 1 especially getting a lot of reworking, because out of the three games, Prime 1 still looks good, for the time, but it's definitely aged the least. There's a lot of fuzzy textures. There's especially in the opening cutscene, there's a lot of the camera when you first land on Talon 4, it zooms in on a lot of pixelated foliage that really doesn't look good nowadays. Whereas Prime 2 and 3, I think, you boost those to 1080p, and Prime 3 in particular, you really don't need to do much to that game. Just boost that game to 1080p and just leave it. Prime 2, maybe do some more subtle graphical adjustments and texture work, with most of the focus being put on Prime 1. And we can talk more about that later, because I want to get back onto the controls in particular. So I mentioned...
Let's circle back there, because you'd created like a pretty cool mock-up of what the controls could look like on the Pro Controller here, and I think it is a lot of kind of standard what you'd expect. You have your R, your Z, R as your weapons and firing. Jump is B, morph ball is A, missiles are Y. You can switch your beams and stuff with X. That was the one actually that stuck out to me, is because when I was looking at this mock-up, and for everyone listening to this too, by the way, I'll link this picture in the description of the show notes. So if you don't know what we're talking about, go check that out, or check it out over on Twitter. But the one that stuck out to me was definitely the beam and the visor swap button, because obviously we're taking away one of the joysticks to do dual analog here, so we only have one D-pad to work with, so that's going to have to double for both. I thought that was pretty clever, actually, to use that extra button, as it were, to swap switching between beams and visors.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, when creating this control scheme, I mean, there were some obvious changes that I knew from the get-go. Like I knew that ZR, I knew that was going to be, the new power beam button, since that's pretty standard for FPSs. But then for other stuff, I'm actually holding my Pro Controller right now, and I literally just held it, and I was just like, what feels natural to, to move my hands with, in accordance with the functions that go with it. And so when doing the thing for the beam swap, I think I talked with this about DAC on a stream a few months back, because I had gears turning in my head about how I was going to do a potential modern FPS type of control scheme, and I was kind of influenced by weapon wheels in modern FPS games. But one thing that Dak and I both agreed on is that we don't like how, weapon wheels, they slow the game down. It kind of takes you out of the action. I love Doom. I love Doom Eternal, and one of the things they actually allow you to do is they allow you to turn on whether or not the weapon wheel will put you in slow-mo or not, and I always turn that off, because I don't like to pause the action, personally. But the cool thing with Prime is that, weapon wheels typically accommodate, 8 to 12 different weapons, or maybe 20, 25 weapons if it's Grand Theft Auto or something. But for Prime, you're only dealing with 4 weapons, so a much easier function, I thought. So if you're looking at the graph, X button, that switches between beam and visor. So what happens is the D-pad, the plus pad, whatever you want to call it, that's going to have the same function as it would on the GameCube controller, where pressing that in any direction would switch your visor. However, you press the X button, and now that plus pad is going to change your beams. There's also another option. If you look at the bottom here, there's all sorts of different little toggle options and stuff, and one of them has hold toggle switch beam visor. That's in the bottom right-hand corner. That basically allows you to either press the X button to switch between beam visor, or it only switches to the beam select when you're holding the X button, as opposed to just pressing it. So whatever you prefer, you can do that option in my make-believe control scheme here.
All right, so I have a question then. So let's say Prime 4 has more than 4 beams, right? Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't anticipate there being a lot of visors. There's only so many ways they would, I guess, try to change it up. Let's say they only had 4 visors. But for me personally, I'm kind of hoping for more beam weapons than 4, So let's say there were more than 4 beam weapons and you couldn't just map all 4 to the D-pad. Like, what would you do in that case?
I'm not sure. I didn't develop the control scheme for Prime 4, so I specifically developed it for the trilogy, and I used what was available.
No, I know. I was
that.
just wondering if you might have thought like of a variation maybe. Because, like, for example, I was like wondering, because I was gonna jump into that later, if they add stuff to the trilogy, maybe like if they added other weapons, for example, how would you deal with that? But yeah, I mean this makes sense though, like switching between the visor and the beams using a button. I guess
I think that the answer to your question, Dak, for Prime 4, because it's probably logical to assume that the controls for Prime Trilogy are going to inform the controls for Prime 4. I think that we'd get some kind of weapon wheel with the X button or whatever that may happen to be, and I'm pretty sure it would probably slow down gameplay, much to your guys' chagrin. That doesn't bother me, especially for a Metroid game, because like you mentioned Doom, and I think that there are times definitely in Doom, which I just finished playing the first Doom game off your recommendation. So I've got Doom Eternal sitting on my shelf waiting to play. But there are definitely times in Doom where like you got to switch weapons like quickly, and like I can see where the slowdown kind of causes you to lose a little bit of your feng shui if you're moving and jumping and trying to shoot at the same time. Metroid, I feel like while there certainly are times where you're taking out swarms of enemies, it's not as often as you just kind of exploring the planet or exploring whatever. So I wouldn't be that wouldn't be a big issue to me to have that slowdown. But I guess it just kind of depends on your your personal preference. Dak, I'm with you. I hope that we do see more than 4 beams, but I think that would be kind of the way that it would go, because we mentioned this way back when. I can't even remember what episode this was on, but like why are we limited to only 4 beams and 4 visors in Metroid Prime 4 when Axiom Verge has like 20 beams that you can choose from and all these other goodies? So like and I think that I think that Nintendo's probably on the same page with us there. Like the more weaponry the better. But yeah, I think that, I mean, this is obviously control scheme based, definitely in the roots of Metroid Prime. You know what? Actually, Doom, the one thing that I would probably have changed, and this one might be a weird one for you guys, but we have the A button as the morph ball button. I actually think that I would have used what's the button called? The L3 button, when you just punch in your joystick. That's L3. I think I would do that just for like a smoother movement or whatever. Like if you're going along, you can just punch it in and then punch it right back without having to move. I don't know. To me, that seems a little bit smoother. But to Dak's point, I would also hope that you're able to heavily customize your control schemes.
That's actually a good point. I didn't even think about that. That would free up a button, and I mean, really, that stick's not really doing anything other than recentering gyro, which could probably be something else. And if you're not using gyro, is essentially not doing anything. So, like that would work, because there's no like crouch in Metroid, right? Like you're either standing or you're in morph ball. So. Like if you're playing like Call of Duty or something like that, or Halo, that right stick you crouch with that toggle in some control schemes. So that would make sense. That's a good idea. Yeah, I would move the morph ball to the right stick click as well.
Nintendo is 100% going to add crouch option for Metroid Prime.
I mean, Samus should be able to crouch. She should be able to, but I mean, I also understand why she doesn't. She can't crawl, so I don't know if she can crouch.
It's true. Only Metroid can crawl.
Yeah.
One other thing I also wanted to go over. So for viewers who are looking at the graph, you might notice that missile/power bomb is listed twice on the controls. Now this is partially just because there's so many buttons on the Switch Pro controller as opposed to the GameCube controller, so there's a lot of additional room. But part of it is also intentional. So I want to give you a scenario, and again, I'm holding the Pro controller in my hand, so try to follow through with me here. Let's talk about beam combos. Metroid Prime 1 and 2 has these epic beam combos, in particular the Super Missile. That's the one you're going to be using most. You use it in puzzles. It's a really easy way to take out space pirates. So let's say 2 scenarios, because now we're doing modern FPS controls, so you might not necessarily be locked on all the time, whereas in the GameCube you were pretty much always locked on, since that was how you circled around enemies. So let's say you still want to lock on, you click the ZL button, and you charge your power beam with ZR. Okay, well, we have one of the buttons mapped to the L button, but that's above the ZL button. So you would have to take off the lock on unless you used your index your middle finger as opposed to your index finger, which most people don't have their index and middle fingers laid on top of both buttons. At least the way I play is I use my
Right.
index finger to swap between the bumpers and the triggers.
Yeah. Me
So,
too.
yeah, so while you're holding on to both the ZL and the ZR buttons, you can also press the Y button to activate your missile combo. Alternatively, let's say you're in a puzzle and you're in the Chozo ruins and you see that classic super missile kind of statue. You scan it, it gives you whatever the material it is that you associate with super missiles. So you're like, okay, but you can't lock onto it because it's not an enemy. Well, you charge up your power beam, and then you use your thumb, which is on your right stick, to move. But because your thumb is on your right stick, you can't move it to the Y button. So what do? You press the L button with your index finger, since that's freed up, since you don't need to lock on. And so that's why I decided to put two of those together, because I think depending on the scenario you're in, it accommodates both whether or not you're free aiming or whether you're locking on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that you explained that pretty eloquently, actually. Yeah, that makes sense to me. To be honest, what about you, Dak?
No, yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense to me. I'm wondering if Nintendo's even gonna like have the lock. I mean, I'm assuming they're gonna have the lock on, but how much they're gonna implement that, because like we're kind of assuming okay, they're gonna have like the dual analog controls, so maybe it won't be emphasized as much, but maybe they won't. Maybe they won't even. They'll like still have the lock on. Maybe they won't even have true dual analog. They'll just be like, nope, you got to use the tank controls again. Because
I hope not.
like that is something that I think they could easily just release the game as it is and just be like, oh, you have gyro and tank controls.
I could totally see it too.
But I think it could happen.
But like
yeah.
that would be such a huge barrier for a lot of people, because I know so many people would be interested, but then it's like, oh yeah, but you still have the GameCube controls, and people would be like, what is this GoldenEye control scheme?
At
like,
that point, I would pretty much just play it on Dolphin and buy the game just to say I own it. But I wouldn't really play it. Like, I want to play it, and I would like to have dual analog. But again, I think it's hard to speculate, because like at the same time they could like release the game and people could complain a lot, and then they could patch it and add it. So who knows?
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about something that I wanted to touch on here in particular, which was the what would you call it? The motion controls, I guess, from Metroid Prime 3. That stuck out to me when I was playing Corruption a few months ago, when we did some kind of show on Corruption, and I was playing it, and it stuck out to me how much more prevalent the gimmicks were in that game than I remember them being, with like the grapple lasso and stuff like that. I actually think, so you've got a button mapped out here for that. I think that, that's probably necessary. I would definitely be okay with just having that be either like strictly gyro, or just having that take place of like when you get the symbol to grip onto someone, instead of like you firing him when you get into proximity and that symbol pops up, then your beam just changes into that grapple. I think that I would be okay with that. What about you guys?
Yeah, so for me, I love the motion controls personally in the Metroid Prime Trilogy, and especially in Prime 3. Some of them are a little over the top and clearly like, more kind of more showcases of what the Wiimote can do and come off as gimmicky. But, stuff like you mentioned, like, ripping shields off space pirates with a grapple lasso, just generally aiming with the Wii remote, like, it feels so fluid and comfortable for me personally. So I don't mind it, but I know a lot of people do mind it, and so that's why I implemented that little button to activate the grapple lasso and the grapple voltage for people who aren't into the whole motion control thing. Because again, I want as many people to play this series as possible.
Right. Yeah, totally. Dak, I don't know, any thoughts, or do you want to move on to some other stuff that I had cooking in my kitchen over here?
Yeah, I think you guys covered it. I don't really have much to add on that. I think I don't really mind the grapple stuff. Really my issue with motion controls from Prime 3 was the point and clicking that you have to do to actually aim and shoot. But like
Right.
pulling, doing grappling to grapple to something, or pulling shields off, that stuff I like. That stuff is fun and a nice way to kind of break up the pace of the action in a lot of battles. So I like that stuff, and I also remember it fondly as a kid, That was one of like the biggest things that they advertised in the game. Like in the original demo that they had at E3, like that was one of the first things you did, walking down like a hallway, and then some pirates showed up. You pulled their shields off, Jackal style. That was cool. So yeah, I mean, I like the implementation of it here. I still think that there's a place for it. And honestly, it would be really cool if like I had the option to maybe have like the Pro controller and have like dual analog controls, and not have any kind of gyro stuff, but when there is like a grapple, like situation or whatever, I can like move my controller to do it there. And I don't know, move it forward and back, like just pull my controller back and grapple something quickly. That could work.
Dak, you just gave me an idea for a completely unrelated game, but you said Jackal, and so I just thought, Master Chief has a grapple hook in Halo Infinite. What if he can rip Jackal shields off in Halo Infinite?
Oh, he's
I don't know.
Just
Just putting that
can.
out there.
I think you can already. I think that's already in the game. I think he does that in a trailer.
Did they show that?
I think
don't remember
so.
seeing that.
I think that was in like not the reveal, but like that shorter trailer. But I think that's in the game. Yeah.
I only saw the reveal, so I don't know.
But
so I want to pose a scenario to you two gentlemen, and I want you to tell me which one you think is more likely. Actually, let's just say 3 scenarios. I'm gonna pose 3 scenarios. Tell me which one you think is the most likely. Scenario 1: Metroid Prime 2 multiplayer is included as is, local only, exactly the way it was in Metroid Prime Trilogy the first time around. Scenario 2: Metroid Prime Echoes multiplayer is included with online play, and it's upgraded, and maybe there's even some extra characters and some bonus content. Option number 3, or scenario 3, is they have completely removed Metroid Prime 2 multiplayer. Dak, what do you think is the most likely out of those 3 scenarios?
Well, I think you're missing an option 4, which is it has online, but it's otherwise not upgraded. Because I definitely don't think they're going to upgrade it at all. There's no way they put any resources to the multiplayer.
Well, hold on. When I say upgraded in scenario 2, my upgrade is literally that it just has online play and like maybe an extra playable.
No, I don't even think it would have an extra playable character. I think it would like the most it would have.
Just lump that into scenario 2 then.
Then I think they'd probably just release it as local play. I don't even think they would put online stuff to it. I don't know. I just think when they would do the trilogy, they kind of just want to release it as is. Probably not support like online. That would just be extra resources for a game that they're probably just getting out to like, make us Metroid fans shut up until Prime 4 comes out. So I don't know if they would just like set up the whole online thing. It would probably take like, they have to set up a whole netcode for it. The original game didn't have online play, so I don't know how that would even work if like it would be set up like programming wise to even support online play. If they even want to go back and like gut the game and redo it or try to implement it and like duct tape online play to the original coding. I don't know, like I'm not a programmer, but it seems like just talking about it now, it seems like some work that I wouldn't want to do. So I don't know if they would want to do it. I think the Prime 2 multiplayer would be a novelty for most people, and like you'd probably play it once, just like when it originally came out. You play it a couple times, maybe with your friends, and then that's kind of it. And I understand some people would be like, oh, it's a missed opportunity to get people to play the multiplayer more, but I'd rather them make some new stuff and not like go back and put resources and devote it. Like if we're going to get the trilogy, just give me the campaigns, right? Like I don't need them to put extra work into the Prime 2 multiplayer. I'd rather them work on like a Prime Hunters remake or a new one or something like that, rather than them putting some resources to the multiplayer here for trilogy. So yeah, I think they would just do the local, keep it as is. If you have fun memories of playing, multiplayer. I don't remember if the original Prime 2 had bots or AI, like you could just set up computers to play against.
I think so.
I don't think it did. No.
Okay, well you guys,
I swear I played it with someone. Maybe I just ran around by myself.
Well, you guys just gave me conflicting answers. So let's assume that it didn't. If that's one improvement they would make is just allow people to play with bots or something, then that way, if there's no online play and someone wants to play locally and they don't have friends to play with or they don't have friends, they can just play against bots and they get that out of the way. Because the multiplayer, it's pretty bare bones. People are gonna play a couple times and like, okay, that was fun, and then move on. Most people who enjoy Metroid don't really play for the multiplayer anyway. So I don't think they would really put any upgrades into it. Keep it as is. I'd rather them focus on other aspects of the trilogy than putting resources towards that anyway.
Yeah, I completely agree with Dak, actually. Like, I think at most they would add online functionality, and I frankly think even that's a bit of a stretch. I think it's just going to be completely untouched, presented as it is, because like Dak said, it's bare bones. Not only the mechanics of Metroid Prime with the lock on, it doesn't really suit Metroid well because it's basically lock onto the enemy and mash A as fast as you can. That's the Metroid Prime 2
Other M
Echoes
fans would love the multiplayer.
Oh,
oh yeah, this is the multiplayer for them.
So yeah, there's that. I do think Metroid Prime 4 is going to have a huge multiplayer component. I do think Nintendo is going to invest a lot of money and resources into that. But I think I think they're saving that for Metroid Prime 4 to make something brand new, to give a modern multiplayer feel with a Metroid twist, kind of a more mature shooting experience, because they already have Splatoon, which is kind of their de facto shooter on the Switch, and I think that still is going to, just because of how insanely huge Splatoon has gotten in its short span of time. But I think Nintendo wants to have a backup on that, and having something like Metroid, which I think a multiplayer Metroid could appeal to a very different audience, a more Western audience especially. But I think that, like I said, I think they're going to save that for Prime 4 so that they can invest brand new resources into it, as opposed to, Echoes mashing as fast as you can on 6 bare bones basic maps.
I think you are going to be in for disappointment for Prime 4. I don't see multiplayer coming back. I actually think that scenario number 3 is the most likely, and that they just don't even include it. And maybe I'll say that it's as likely as including it as is, completely bare bones. But like, man, that multiplayer was so poor. I looked it up, by the way. Doom, you are correct. There are no bots in that, so I must have just been running around shooting
bots,
a non-existent player too.
You might be thinking of Hunters, because I know Hunters had bots at least.
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. But I mean, Metroid Prime 2 not having bots is ridiculous. Perfect Dark had bots. Like GoldenEye had bots.
Well, they probably worked on it in like a week, and they just like added it really quick. Like, how can we add value to this game like in a short period of time?
And that's my point, and it shows. And I feel like it's so poor that I think it would be just as easy for Nintendo to say, like, you know what? Forget this. Like nobody is playing Metroid Prime 2 for the multiplayer anyways. And frankly, I just think this is a separate discussion, but I just think multiplayer is an experiment we've tried in Metroid, and it's failed every time. And
he doesn't like playing games with friends. He likes to play. It's a solo experience for him, and I understand that. No, I get that. I want
I'm kind of on both sides. I'm kind of on both sides of the aisle here. The Metroid centrist weighing in, I guess, but
I don't think they'll cut it out though. I feel like that would be even like more work
I feel like,
to get rid of it.
I was about to say, I feel like cutting it out would take more resources.
Just don't even touch it, right? And plus, you don't know, like, that game was developed 20 years ago. You don't know, like, deleting the multiplayer might like screw up something else in the game that's like somehow tied to it in the coding. And like, I'm sure if I was importing it, they'd probably try to touch as little of it as possible, so that way, like, the code works. We
need to get She Says to do a boundary break on this to confirm these findings.
That's true.
Give our man a ring. Okay, let's really quickly touch upon something else that I feel sticks out for me in Metroid Prime Trilogy right now. We were talking about gimmicks with the corruption gyro controls. Is there anything more gimmicky than the me friend tokens that they have right now in Prime Trilogy? Because I can't think of anything. There's tons of stuff that I want to get, extras and stuff that I want to get in Metroid Prime Trilogy, but as Dak correctly points out, I don't play games with friends, so I never get me friend tokens, so I can't get any of that. I'm hoping to see that entire system just completely scrapped for Prime Trilogy. Get it out. I mean, obviously they would have to get it out since, that's not a thing anymore, but either just have all that content ready at the start, like whatever, or maybe it unlocks after you beat the game, or put in some like kind of achievement system or something. But yeah, that definitely needs to go.
Yeah, the friend tokens are definitely a relic of Nintendo's early experimentation online, where they were, well, I mean, they're still behind the curve today, but they were slightly more behind the curve than they are nowadays, I guess. And that was, I guess, those friend tokens are one of those relics from those early days of experimenting. And, good idea in theory, terrible idea in execution. Myself, personally, I just got a hacked save file on, well, not really a hacked save file online, but a transferred save file online with blank save states, but with all the friend tokens already unlocked, so that, because that's the only way you can unlock the bonus content nowadays. because the Wii Connect 24 service and the Wi-Fi is completely down outside of some weird custom servers for some select few games. But yeah, just do away with the whole thing. Just be able to unlock all the stuff naturally in game. Unless there's like again, if for some strange reason they add some like additions to the multiplayer, which I think we all agree it's not going to happen. If for some reason they do, like, I could see like, like in multiplayer games, how when you rank up, you'll unlock a cosmetic item or something like that.
Oh,
so
I don't even want to hear that suggestion. Ugh. Ugh. That's what
get to level 10 and unlock the default dance for Samus.
These stupid tokens just look so cheesy too. It's the worst when it pops up when you're playing the Prime games, because it's like this. It's really cheesy looking green or red Metroid, the Screw Attack logo that pops up. And
well, you can turn them off at least, so there's that.
You can, but I mean, like, for me, like, every time I play the game, I forget about turning it off until it pops up, and I'm like, ugh, and it kind of takes me out of the moment. So I'm really hoping that they just, like, completely do away with that. Or maybe, you know what, you guys might not agree with this, too, and I'm kind of jumping the queue here, but I would even be okay with those assets being hid behind amiibo. If you have, the Samus or Metroid or Ridley amiibo or whatever, and you scan that and you get some of those assets, I would be fine with that. I know that some people wouldn't, because it's like the argument that amiibo is paid DLC, but I don't know. That would work for me, at least. Anything would be better than that.
I'm fine with amiibo unlocks, as long as there's an alternative way to unlock that for people that haven't pre-ordered the amiibo in time, or who don't have an action replay and can just download the bin files online. So yeah, I think amiibo unlocks to some degree are inevitable. Nintendo seems they've definitely downsized their production on amiibo, but they still do amiibo even outside of Smash to this day, for pretty much all their games to some capacity. So I don't know what that capacity would be for Prime Trilogy, but I'm sure it'll play at least some small role. I hope it's bonus content. It could just be like, hey, get an extra reserve tank or something dumb like that.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. Let's have some fun here, guys.
Yes.
This probably won't happen, but let's say that Nintendo releases some amiibo to coincide with this. Dak, who do you hope it is? Because I have a feeling I know.
Oh, do you? For Metroid Prime Trilogy, what amiibo I want? I don't know. I want
Madeline Bergman.
No, that's trilogy. That's not trilogy though. Admiral Dane. I want an Admiral Dane amiibo.
Yeah, my man.
Give me an Admiral Dane amiibo. I want a life-size Admiral Dane amiibo.
You know, we need that. We need that pirate Admiral Dane amiibo.
Yes, exactly. I want the pirate version as well. He has like the peg leg. Yes, 100%.
Better yet. First four figures. If you're listening to this, Chadmiral Dane face bust. Let's go.
I'm definitely down for that.
I'm gonna give you a legit suggestion here. Obviously, I think that if we ever got Metroid Prime Trilogy amiibo, it would probably be Samus, and probably I think Meta Ridley would be pretty likely. But I'm gonna throw out there that I would love an amiibo of Samus's ship from. Or frankly, from any game, actually.
The corruption
but maybe
one.
From
the
Prime
corruption,
1.
I was going to say the corruption ship I would love an amiibo for.
The corruption ship is super awesome, but there's something classic about the Prime 1. I would be totally fine with either. Both of them are awesome. That would be really cool, I think.
Personally, I think the obvious addition, if there are going to be trilogy amiibos, is just Samus in like all her different suits. Have like a Various suit, Gravity suit, Phazon suit, Dark, Light, a PED suit, maybe two PED variants, one for her first one and one for her fully corrupted version. I think maybe a Dark Samus amiibo. We already got that for Smash, but I mean, plenty of series have, multiple copies. I mean, Mario has like 4 or 5 different amiibo at this point, so
Phazon suit amiibo is exciting to me, actually. I didn't consider that, but that would be really cool.
Or even a power suit amiibo.
The light suit, yeah. Dak, what do you got? Who would you want to see other than
Admiral Dane? Jeez, let's see. I think probably an Aurora unit amiibo would probably be cool. You know, that might be an interesting thing. I'd probably look weird. I don't know
Yeah.
who'd be into that, but it might be a niche little piece of merch. There must be some Aurora unit fans out there. Um, Other
Aurora
than
Unit fans, sound off in the comments. Where are you at?
yeah, exactly. Somebody out there must want that. Probably like a Dark Samus, like maybe like Final Form Dark Samus amiibo. Like
Ooh, I love that idea.
like some different
Oh.
Dark Samus amiibos could be cool. Personally, I would love a Thardus amiibo. Like maybe some boss amiibos would be cool. But I mean, I'm also not like particularly looking forward to spending money on plastic I don't need. So I'll take what I can get. I have some ideas for the game itself, not more amiibo.
I'm a slave to first four figures, so as far as I'm concerned, Amiibos is easy mode. So I say Nintendo, go off. Do your worst.
Let's get to the game itself here and rapid fire talk about just some quality of life improvements, changes, and stuff like that. And let's kind of go rapid fire here. So, Dak, you mentioned earlier that you don't think the graphics will get updated. I think that they would get a little bit of a facelift. Maybe not like a full-blown HD scrub like the Wind Waker got or like Skyward Sword is getting. But I do think that they'll get a little bit of a facelift. You don't think so?
Well, I mean, I don't know because I think it'll depend on each individual game. Like maybe Prime 3 might get some more than Prime. Maybe Prime will get some more than Prime 3. It depends on how they look at it because I know like Doominal mentioned earlier, like maybe the Prime games will get some more work because like, the Mario games will just sell regardless. But at the same time, I feel like even if they upgrade like the games and graphics and like advertise it, I don't know if that'll really move like, the meter as much as they would think in terms of getting more people to try the games out just because like they might be have better textures or something like that. Unless they went all the way and like really HD remastered it. So I don't know. I think we'll probably get like maybe an aspect ratio increase, like maybe an FPS increase. I really think it'll be small stuff. Of course, I would love to see a full HD remaster, especially for Prime. Like I would love that. We don't really live in that reality, but a really cool like full HD remake would be sick. But I'm expecting maybe just maybe FPS upgrade for them, 60 FPS. And then
Well, the games are already in 60 FPS, but
like,
there
are they?
are
Okay.
like certain but there are certain areas where the frame rate dips. So I think
it's
like
not
just a more
consistent
stable
FPS.
performance.
Yeah,
I
that's
think.
what I'm saying. Yeah, like I think like consistent like 60 FPS, maybe textures look a little better. I wouldn't really expect too much though.
Yeah, there's a couple of cutscenes like really stick out to me in Prime 1. When you first meet Meta Ridley and he does that explosion as he leaves the ship, the frame rate just tanks and turns into a PowerPoint presentation. There's also a lot of debris that pops in and out. It just looks really bad. I would love that cutscene in general to be cleaned up. And then there's also the Omega Pirate cutscene. Right as he breaks free, the frame rate just cuts in half completely for a couple seconds, and it looks really weird.
Right. Let's talk about Doom. You mentioned loading times, and
Yes.
my initial thought with loading times was like, you know what? Like, I actually don't mind the elevator rides. I think that those are kind of nice, and they're nice ways to mask the loading times. But then I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, man, there are a lot of times where you shoot a door and the color goes away, and it just takes forever to actually open up, and that can happen when you're in the line of fire. So I definitely hope to see that changed as well.
Yeah, so the loading time, I actually don't think the loading times are too bad for the most part in the first couple of games. The ones that stand out to me is going between the light and dark worlds in Prime 2 and entering the energy control rooms, because you'll go into morph ball mode, you'll do the bomb slot, and it'll slowly rotate you to the other side of the room. And you can skip the cutscenes, but even when you skip that, it still takes a while to load in, so doing improvements to those. But by far the biggest work that I think this game needs is those Prime 3 doors, man. They can get pretty bad sometimes. 10 to 15 seconds just waiting there. And 10 to 15 seconds, it doesn't sound like much, but it can get agonizing when it happens like 2-3 doors in a row.
Yeah. And it's sporadic too. It's not like you kind of mentioned it. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, man, it sticks out. And it's
like, such a pace killer. Like it takes you out completely.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I would actually like maybe a bit of a hot take personally. I hope that I think the loading times are a more important issue to address than the actual visuals. Because, I mean, the games are... Obviously, I hope that the games look beautiful as possible, but, like, you know, that's, you know, that's fluff. That's a cherry on top. The actual performance of the game, that actually affects the raw gameplay. And so I think that's the more crucial issue to address, you know. So if I had to pick one or the other, I would pick loading times personally.
No, I agree. I'd rather be able to just like smoothly walk from room to room rather than standing around like over like a very small, like insignificant upgrade otherwise.
Yeah, that's a good take. That's not a hot take. That's a good take, by God. Let's talk about some travel routes. Doom, you had said that you were looking for more like ways to get to and fro around the map in Prime 1 and 2, I'm assuming in particular. I don't know. I think I'm okay with the amount of elevators and stuff that we have, but I guess I wouldn't be opposed to seeing more connectivity added.
Yeah, so I actually had this idea. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the Geek Critique. You know, he's a game reviewer on YouTube, and he actually reviewed the entire Metroid Prime Trilogy, and I disagree with a few of his takes, but I still respect them, and that's kind of why I added this. Because one thing he noted in Prime 1 is he didn't like the traversal a lot in Prime 1, because while I personally love the fact that, you know, you could be in Chozo Ruins one moment, and then the next moment you're in Fendrana, and then the next moment you're in, you know, Talon Overworld, and you're doing this giant road trip, kind of going all over the place. Whereas in Prime 2 and 3, it's kind of like a Zelda dungeon style, where you're in one area, then you go to the next area in a kind of a linear fashion. Well, both games are linear, but, you know, it's more, I guess, more binary, if that makes sense. But sure. he didn't really. But there's this one sequence in particular, and you might know which sequence this is. It's right after you defeat Flugra, and you enter Magmor for the first time. You go all the way for Fendrana, you collect the boost ball, and then you have to go all the way back to Talon Overworld, collect the space jump, and then go all the way back to Fendrana, I believe, to collect the wave beam, which is next. It's been a while since I've played Prime, but I believe that's next in the succession. Right. And while I don't mind these routes because I know a lot of these maps to the back of my head, I pretty much know where to go, I can also imagine for a first-time player how that would be really daunting. Like, imagine Breath of the Wild, where, you know, you can't fast travel between shrines, and, you know, let's say you have to go from Kakariko Village, let's say, to the Great Plateau, and then all of a sudden go all the way back to, like, Kakariko Village, but you don't have a horse or fast travel. That would feel pretty daunting, you know. For people in the audience who've played that, I hope that's an understandable kind of analogy to make there. And so I think, you know, just doing, you know, some very minor additional rooms to kind of make travel between areas a little easier. Not necessarily fast travel points, but just something to make traversal easier for those large sections where you have to travel from one side of the map to the other.
Dak, I don't know if I agree with that, but weigh in on this. What do you think?
You know, I'm kind of in between, because I do agree with what he's saying. There are times in the game where you're just legging it, and it kind of can get slow, especially in the actual, like, version of the game. Like, when I played it on Dolphin recently, it does feel smoother, because, like, I have more free control over where I can move, so I can cut corners, like, moving back and forth. But in the original games, it can kind of be a slog to backtrack here and there. And while the backtracking is it's part of the game's DNA, I do think, you know, 20 years later, it could be a little streamlined. Personally, I've always thought, and I've thought this for a while, that I think it would be good, at least in, like, you know, for example, the original Metroid Prime, to, like, be able to fast travel or warp back to your ship back on Talon Overworld. So at the very least, you can go back there and use that as a jumping off point to, like, maybe skip, like, a portion of you know, going to another area and then just go from there. Like, I'm not sure.
I like that idea.
You know, I don't know how it would make sense, like, in game. Like, maybe they come up with, like, a something, they put it in, like, the save station room. It's like some kind of, like, little teleporter or something. I don't know how they would make it work. Maybe it wouldn't make sense lore wise, but at this point, like, who cares? Like, it's a game. It's 20 years ago. Like, just add it as a feature. But, like, yeah, you fast travel back to the
bird
ship.
magic.
Yeah, like, just something, like, just, you know, you don't even have to explain it.
Who cares?
Who cares? You go back to the ship, and then that way you're not, like, completely eliminating a lot of the fast track, or, like, a lot of the backtracking, and you're not, like, kind of fundamentally changing the flow of the game too much. but it also gives
Right.
you the flexibility to decide, like, oh, in some scenarios it might not be that helpful, so you still kind of have to do it the old way. But in some other scenarios, it'll be helpful to kind of cut down some time, go back to your ship, and for new players, it's a quick way to get to a save station as well. It'll take you away from the progress you made in that section a little bit, but it's a good way to like go back and maybe, you know, give yourself some relief. So that's what I've always thought,
Right.
like kind of as a I don't know, a compromise, so to speak.
Yeah, I think that's a solid idea.
I think I agree with you. And Prime 2 did something similar to that, where you can warp. I mean, granted, not until you get the light suit, but you can warp between the energy stations towards the end of the game. I think that I would be willing to say, like, set up a warp point per area and to your ship, and I'd be fine with that. But to your point, like, I feel like exploration is in, like, the DNA of Metroid, and, like, that's the point. And I don't know that it's fair to compare it to Breath of the Wild, because that map is like 200 times bigger than Metroid Prime's, you know what I mean? So I think that, like, I think that while I would be open to adding in key warp points, kind of like Metroid Prime 2 did, but like right away. So like once you reach the area, let's just say that you get to Chozo Ruins, and I don't know, you drop a beacon or something like that, and it can warp you right into that main room in Chozo Ruins. I'm fine with that. But
yeah, like I said, I don't. Or sorry, go on.
Well, and I was just gonna say I don't know that that we need to make it like, you know, explicitly like we need to go here, and like, because we talked about this a little bit on our Prime 2 definitive ranking, where like I'm the type of player where like I like exploration, right? And I always 100% the games. Like, to me, kind of going back and forth in between is a big draw. Whereas like in Prime 2, I wasn't really a fan of like going into the one section, completing it all, and then never going back kind of deal. But you know, I mean, that
until the
varies.
last item hunt. But yeah, I pretty much
Right.
agree with that. I guess what I had in mind maybe is just like maybe the addition of like a couple more elevators or something like that. Because I agree with you. I think exploration is like a core tenet of Metroid. Backtracking to a degree, you know, if there's no backtracking, it's not a Metroid game. The question is, can you make the backtracking and the exploration a fun part of the game, an engaging part of the game? And for me personally, it is. I think there are like
Right.
slight nips and tucks you can make, and you know, just ways that you can trim the fat just a little bit for new players without neutering the core experience, if that makes any sense.
Right. Yeah, I think that would be what you laid out, Dak, is a fair middle ground. I think that new players and old players could probably compromise on. If you really don't want to use warp points, you don't have to, but maybe don't make a warp point in
Yeah.
like every big room too. I think that's fair.
I'd also be down for an extra elevator here and there. That would also be good.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hate it, but you know, I'm an old timer when it comes to Metroid.
I don't think it needs to change too much, but yeah, so I agree.
Let's quickly talk about just a few more points here. Rapid fire. We're running a little bit long, but let's finish it off here. Do we think that there's going to be any content added to this, whether it's behind amiibo, DLC, anything at all, or are we just getting this release and here you go, shut up, Metroid fans?
Oh man, I see some of this stuff I was thinking about might just be better for Prime 4, you know? But I personally, I don't think we'll really get too much extra content, which is a shame because I feel like if it was another developer, like, you know, I'm a big Halo fan. I've been playing Master Chief Collection, like all the stuff that they're adding to like Halo 3 and the older games, like new content, like Halo 3 is getting 2 new maps in 2021. I know they're not technically new. They're from Halo Online from a few years ago, but whatever. New to the Halo 3, like it's getting all this new content, and I wish like Nintendo games kind of got the same treatment. But I don't think Prime Trilogy will get like new content. I think maybe they could add, yeah, like the stuff that I'm thinking of that they would add is stuff that I don't know if they would like be incised to add themselves. Because if I remember correctly, the 3D All Stars collection didn't have any extra added content for that, so. Nope. I'm not expecting anything for this game. Personally, though, if I let's say if I was at the helm and I wanted to add some new stuff, that would be realistic. That'd be really cool. I would love if they added a boss rush mode for Trilogy. That like a way to play all the bosses at once throughout the game. Maybe play all the bosses, like all the boss fights at once across all 3 games. That'd be really cool. I would love that. Maybe custom save points to make, you know, speedrunning easier. Maybe some speed running and high score leaderboards. I think that might be a bit too much because that would lean into like online system stuff.
Right.
But
That'd be cool. Though.
yeah, that would be cool. I think the boss rush mode would be a really big thing for me. I personally like the boss fights across the board for a lot of the Prime games. You know, we've talked about the boss fights in a bunch of the episodes we've done for this show, and we've mentioned a bunch of boss fights that we really like, and a lot of the time they are highlights of these games that we're playing. And compared to other FPS games, Metroid Prime, I think, does a pretty good job with boss fights. So I would love a boss rush mode. I think that would be something that they wouldn't have to like put too many like resources into either. Like that would be pretty easy to put together, like programming wise. So that's how I could see that being realistic. The thing that I would also love, and I think you guys will probably disagree with me on this heavily, but I would love it if they added 2-player co-op to these games. Like, I knew you were going to groan, and I get it. But the games have been around for so long. People have had so many opportunities to play the game as they are. I think it would be really cool to have the opportunity to traverse the areas with a friend, right? Like, who cares if it kind of breaks the immersion and all that? You can still go and play the game by yourself when your friend leaves or whatever. But I think it'd be really cool to go through these areas with a friend. It'd be a new way to experience them for people who have already played the games. People who are new to them, it'd be a cool way to get into them or maybe have a helping hand. It could make for some cool new gameplay experiences, taking on bosses, taking on enemies with 2 players. And it might make for a fun new gameplay experience that we didn't think that we wanted or enjoyed. And if you don't want to play it, you don't have to. But I think that would be a cool way to infuse some more replay value into these games. And for me personally, it would make me want to play them even more for someone who can just play them on my computer. So those are the 2 things I would want. The boss rush mode and 2-player co-op I think would be great for these games.
God, I was about to say you took the words out of my mouth until you threw that co-op nonsense in there. What could I say? I hate that, but that's no surprise. It just doesn't make sense for me. But I mean, let's just table that for another time. Doom, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the co-op could work in some places. I'm not sure how. I'm thinking of some parts of the adventure, like, because what happens if you get too far apart? Because there's no way, like,
just have them like
teleport, there's no way
like together, you know,
like New Super Mario Brothers style,
or like in Halo, you know, like whoever gets lagged behind just like teleports the person who's ahead. Or if there's like a puzzle that there's a puzzle that requires one person, just whoever gets there first is doing the puzzle does it, and the other person waits. Like, yeah, it wouldn't be perfect, but like so what? Like it would be better. I think it would be cool to have it as an addition. It wouldn't be perfect, and again, if you don't like it, you don't have to play it, but. I think it would be fun.
I think that's the thing is like I obviously don't like that, but I mean if they if it's in there it doesn't offend me, I just wouldn't play it. But at the same time, I wouldn't want to see them, kind of as you say, devote resources into doing that because and let's just table this conversation about multiplayer.
I'm just like talking in like okay, we have resources to use, and that's something that I don't think would require too much, right? It's not like they're creating whole new content, right? They're just copying and pasting another player into the game. Like personally, I mean, if they really were going to put resources into this, I think it would be awesome if they did add more content. If they added like a post-credits mission where Samus like goes back to Talon 4 and the Phasen's gone and she has some other mission there, right? They would never do that, but that'd be really cool. Or if they added
that probably sounds like Metroid Prime 4, frankly.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is that eventually you're crossing into the line, like because I have a bunch of other ideas, like for example, it would be cool if maybe you could like leave like signs for other players, kind of like Journey style or whatever. Like someone could scan a message from a player that's been left, but like again, that would require online stuff, and that I think would be better for Metroid Prime 4. And also, I don't want Metroid Prime 4 to be co-op focused either, though I think co-op would be cool. I want the game to be made for a first-person experience. So it's not like I want like this to inform Prime 4 in any kind of way. I'm more so looking at it as like, how can we, make this experience a little more different that's been around for 20 years, right? And not necessarily to change up the Metroid formula, because I don't want Metroid Prime 4 to be primarily a co-op experience. But Trilogy's been around for however long. Metroid Prime 1's been around for almost 20 years, as Doominal mentioned. And that's a great point, by the way. I completely forgot about that anniversary. I doubt Nintendo will remember it, but we do. It'd be a cool way to kind of bring a new perspective to the game, so a little new life to the game as well. And for people who might not, like, I guess, find Prime as enjoyable, like, some people aren't into like the isolationist, like just walking by yourself game. Like I've talked to a lot of people who just like tried to get into Metroid Prime and they just can't. Like they find it boring, or they don't like the gameplay, or it's too slow, or it's hard, or whatever it is. I think co-op would be a great way to remedy that, because at least you have a friend to help you out. It makes the game a little more fun, a little more funny when you have a pal, helping you out here. And I think that would make the game a little more accessible to get people into it. So, and I like co-op. So
let's table the rest of
boss
this
rush
for
mode,
another
though.
episode.
Boss rush mode.
This is spiraling out of control here. Because I have so much I want to say to that, but we got to wrap this up here. Let's end on one thing.
I'm pretty indifferent on it. I'll just say. I mean, if it's in there, cool for the people that are into it. It's not personally my thing, so I'm whatever. But yeah.
The only good thing would be online co-op so that we could play and I could shoot you in the back or something.
I'd be down for that. Yeah, there we go.
Let's end on one thing here, Doom, that you pointed out that I think is a great idea. I can't believe I didn't think of this. A demo for Metroid Prime. This makes so much sense. You have the perfect demo already. You could just put the beginning of Metroid Prime in there when you're on the frigate. Like that's a perfect demo right there. This makes so much sense to me. I really, really hope that they do this if and when Metroid Prime Trilogy becomes a reality.
Yeah, throwing it back in the day when playing the Target kiosk demo. But yeah, so I actually had a much more ambitious idea for a demo. So like first off, like yeah, of course, like Metroid is obvious. The fact that Nintendo scrapped Metroid Prime 4 and is rebuilding it from scratch tells me personally that they have huge ambitions for this game long term for the Metroid series. And I feel like Prime Trilogy is going to be a part of the strategy too. And the perfect idea is a demo. Nintendo releases demos for tons of their games that they really want to sell the idea to. I mean, I'd argue that a huge reason Splatoon is so big as it is because of that first Wii U demo, and then eventually the two Splatoon 2 demos that came out before the game released. Yeah. And so for me personally, like I can attest, like playing the original Splatoon demo on the Wii U, I originally had no interest in the game until I played that demo, and then I fell in love with it, and now I own both the Splatoon games. And even Pikmin 3 Deluxe. I'd never played a Pikmin game before, and then, because, it didn't really look like my style of game, and then I played the demo, and I fell in love with it, and now I own Pikmin 3 Deluxe on the Switch, which I really need to get around to playing.
Pikmin 3 Deluxe. I just finished that. Such a good game.
Yeah, if you haven't played it yet, like at least try out the demo for the people that are listening. I had so much fun with it, so I would definitely recommend trying that. But yeah, my idea for the demo though was a little more ambitious. I was thinking of having a demo section from each of the 3 games. You mentioned, the Frigate Orpheon sequence. That's like the perfect demo for Prime 1. Start on Frigate Orpheon, you end it right as Samus is chasing Ridley down to Town 4. You cut it there. For Prime 3, you have the Olympus sequence. You arrive on Olympus, and then as Samus is flying down to Norion, you cut the demo there. You want to continue playing by Prime 3. Prime 2 is a little trickier to do, because Prime 2 doesn't really have, like, that big opening set piece moment like Primes 1 and 3 does. It's a bit more of a relaxed experience where it kind of like slowly builds up, whereas it's like this burst of action that kind of sets you up for the rest of the game. I'm not sure how many people have played it, but there's a very cool collector's item which I have called the Metroid Prime 2 bonus disc. It includes a lot of behind the scenes content for that game, a Metroid timeline, as well as an early demo of Prime 2. It might be the E3 demo. I'm not fully sure. But yeah, this was my introduction to Prime 2 back in the day. I played it about a month before the game came out. It came with Nintendo Power, and I believe it was bundled with certain GameCube bundles of Prime 1, if I'm not mistaken. But it includes like a bunch of the rooms in the game from the landing site in Aegon Waste, and they're all kind of shuffled. I believe you go from the landing site, you transition to one of the space pirate battles in Aegon Wastes, and then you go to the Dark World and Dark Ether. You fight a couple of Warrior Ing, and then the demo ends right there. I feel like that would be harder to implement, just because that would require, that's not just cutting the game off at a point. That requires like actually like changing the positions of the rooms and how they load into each other, kind of like that original demo did. But since that's the demo that I played of Prime 2, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, and I'm not sure if there's any other sequence that just
I think
standalone.
That when Samus loses all of her power-ups could be an appropriate point to cut off the demo too, because that takes place after You go. Is that? Do you go to the Dark World when that happens, Dak? Is that when Samus gets all of her powers sucked
Yeah,
up by the
she
ink?
goes in the
Yeah.
teleporter or whatever, the warp thing, and then the Ing attack her, and she's like, "Oh no!" And then she falls back, and
I feel like that
whole
would be a
thing.
really short demo though, because that happens really early on in the game,
Yeah, yeah, it probably would.
and you don't really do much. And you don't really do much before then. Like I can't remember. Is that before or after you even face your first zombie dark troopers? Like I can't remember.
I believe it's after because I
Okay.
tried to get my wife to play the intro and she failed, and I just took over, and she failed fighting those zombie dark troopers. So,
Oh no.
yeah, she didn't make it very far. But yeah, I mean it's definitely ambitious, and I can't say that I think it's super likely, but it would be pretty cool if you could sample a little bit of each game. I do feel like if you just had the Orpheon section there, that's probably a sample enough in my eyes. And it's such a clean breaking point that it just I think it just makes a lot of sense. But I'd be totally down for all those ideas here. We're running long, so let's wrap this up, guys. Any quick final parting thoughts on Prime Trilogy for the Switch? Anything that we just want to leave off on, or have we got it all out?
oh, I had one more additional content idea. I wonder if y'all will vibe with this one. But if you
Oh,
if you
God.
remember, in Prime 3,
All NPCs are Admiral Dane, right?
yeah, I want Big Head mode. I want all Admiral Dane mode. Every character is
Man
all
of
Admiral-
culture.
exactly. But what I really want, well, I do really want those things. But what I also want is, if you remember in Prime 3, in the cockpit of your ship, you could get like bobbleheads. I want more stuff you could put in your ship. I want more bobbleheads.
You know what?
I want more little trinkets I could put in my ship. Maybe like give me some amiibos. I don't know, cool little.
There's
things.
your amiibo functionality right there. Scan the amiibo and you get a new bobblehead in your ship.
Scan your amiibo and you get it in your ship. That would be awesome. Like, give me that kind of stuff.
I was ready to hate your idea, but instead I love your idea.
Why? Because it includes
love it.
amiibos. What's the fundamental wrong idea about Samus having bobbleheads? Samus can like bobbleheads.
No. When you said I got another idea, I was
Oh.
just like, oh god, he's gonna suggest more co-op. But
Why do you
Co-op
not
mode
want
for
to
the
play
co-op?
video games with friends, man? What is it?
I have no friends. You know that.
We're friends, man. We can play games together.
No, I have no friends.
Well, hopefully one day you get some, and when you get some, you'll learn the loveliness that is co-op gaming. But yeah, I would love some.
you don't want to see me play Smash Bros. with people.
Well,
I'm
we
not
gotta play some. That's not co-op, but yeah, we gotta. I would love some like additional kind of stuff like that. You know me, I love kind of customization. Like if I were to go crazy, I'd be like, give me custom Samus suits, colors, and arm cannons. But I think that goes a little far for this. But I would.
Diamond Camo Samus, where you at?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I want some crazy ass stuff like that. But to be realistic, I think it'd be cool. Yeah, scan your amiibo and your amiibo show up like
I think that is realistic, actually.
what having like custom like colors and stuff.
No, like having the bobblehead.
Oh,
amiibo
yeah,
you
yeah,
make.
no, yeah, that's
I
what I'm
think
saying.
that's,
That
like,
is that I think
yeah.
is realistic. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think that's realistic. Like you could, I mean, for me, I would just take all my amiibos and try to scan as many of them as possible. Just have my whole dashboard just filled with bobbleheads. But like that would be great. Like you're not in your ship for too long in that game. Maybe a nice little touch to update that part of it. So I would like that.
I don't know if I could fit all my amiibos in the cockpit.
I'm sure they'd limit you, but I would.
Yeah.
That'd be funny if you could just scan an unlimited amount and like her ship is just filled with amiibos. Like she's like looking over like a pile of them. Like that'd be funny.
You can't even see out the cockpit. It's
Yeah.
just all blocked by stacks of amiibos.
That's the kind of stuff I want. Like, you know, this is the perfect opportunity to do cool little funny things like that. Like, just, you know, it's a video game. Like, have fun with it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Doom. Anything you want to end on? Anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Yeah, sure. I'll just do lightning round on some quick quality life improvements that we didn't quite go over. I think the artifact quests for newcomers could be a little more flexible, and I think some changes to that isn't really unprecedented. Nintendo did something similar in Wind Waker HD, where they reduced the amount of Triforce pieces you had to collect during that very similar end quest, and they also reduced the Tears of Light, I believe, in Twilight Princess HD. I haven't played that one before. I've only played the original version. So
They reduced it, and there's still too many Tears of Light.
oof. And then another idea I had, and this one I I really want. Prime 3 introduced a bookmark system where you could highlight a room. So let's say you encounter like a door that you can't open, or you some sort of debris and you don't have the right material to make it go away. Well, you could actually go into your map and highlight that room. It would highlight the room green rather than blue or orange, so that you would remember to come back to it. And I think, but you can only do that to one room at a time, which I thought was really weird because it's like, what? Why? You're gonna do that like plenty of times. So. And now in modern day games, like Samus Returns introduced the pin feature, in Breath of the Wild and similar open world games, you can highlight, these beacons on point of the map so that you remember to come back to points of interest. And so I think taking that bookmark system, expanding it so that you can do it to more rooms, maybe adding some more different colors so that you can, color code like what that means and implement that across the trilogy, I think that would be a fantastic addition for new players. To make the whole experience feel a lot more welcoming and less alienating.
Yeah, that's a great idea. You know what? I dare say that I would even go and take a page out of Other M's book where you can just scan like an item pickup that you can hear or that you can see and you can't quite get yet. And maybe they could do something similar. But yeah, pins is a natural one that I think should and will probably be included. If not in Trilogy, then definitely Prime 4.
Mm-hmm. Well, even going off that, so Prime 3 actually allows you to see where all of the items are hidden. If you go into Skytown, you go to the satellite room, and then once you access the spider ball, you can start using the bomb slots to activate satellites, and it will tell you where all the items are on the planet. I think maybe adding something similar to like that, let's say that you're a veteran, and you're like, no, I don't want to know where any of the items are. I want to discover this on my own. You don't have to use that satellite room or whatever the equivalent would be. But if you are a newcomer and you're like, yeah, I could use, some extra help, then yeah, you could activate the satellite room and see where all the items are in the area. Something like that, I think would be, a really nice quality of life improvement for newcomers.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, well, we are running along here, so we are going to get out of here. But Doom, it was nice to finally have you on the show here after so many months of chit-chatting back and forth, and I hope that that you come back and do it all over again sometime soon.
Yeah, gentlemen, I had so much fun talking with y'all. Like, this was a long time coming, and this went fantastic today. I hope we get some more Metroid news that we can talk about in the future together.
Oh, don't we all? Don't we all, by God. All right, well, we are going to get out of here. Of course, we want to tell everyone to check on, or head on over to Twitter, rather, easy for me to say, and give us a follow at Omega Metroid Pod. You can check me out at Spateri316, at DackCity_, and at Doominal Cross over on Twitter. That's it for us for this week. We are getting out of here. All right, head on over to iTunes, Podbean, wherever you get your podcast, like and subscribe, and make sure to give us that sweet 5-star review if you like what we're doing. Until next week, we will see you then. Take care.